This video found you not because of an algorithm, but because your resonance flagged you in the quantum field. You've been transmitting a silent signal, and the field answered. That's the observer effect reversed. Before you look at your life has already noticed you. Even when you don't notice change, the morphic field is registering your coherence increments, tiny adjustments that add up to a quantum shift. You think progress happens when you finally see proof. But notice what keeps occurring. The moment you relax your surveillance, the frequency rises anyway. Why? Because embodiment precedes observation. Your body, your breath, your posture, the micro choices you repeat, performs quantum selection long before your mind narrates it. Identity is a tuning fork. When you hold a note consistently, the timelines that match it begin to hum, and the world rephrases around you. Right now, signals are showing. Small frictions no longer stick. Old loops feel muffled, as if you're listening through water. Random invitations align, then cancel, then reappear at better moments, as though non-linear time is arranging the optimum route. That isn't luck, it's phase alignment. Your system is finding coherence with outcomes you once only visualized. Entanglement is practical. You resonate with futures, and those futures tug back. You are trained to look for fireworks, for the dramatic pivot that announces, now it's real. But the deeper truth is subtler and more reliable. Frequency rises in the background, the way dawn edges a room, quiet, precise, unstoppable. When you stop demanding spectacle, your nervous system stops bracing, and energy that was guarding becomes energy that's guiding. That's when quantum selection accelerates. Watch now, because the field is time-sensitive. Opportunities cluster in windows, and coherence windows are narrow by design. They compress choice, so you can anchor faster. If you understand this, you stop sabotaging with premature measurement. Observation is powerful, but early measurement collapses. Possibilities you haven't embodied yet. The sequence is simple. Embody, then observe. Become the frequency, then confirm the evidence. Your attention is a scalpel. Use it after the form is alive. Here's the promise. You will recognize the invisible ways your frequency has been climbing, and you'll learn to lock it in. You'll see why subtle calm is not emptiness but density, why fewer words mean more gravity, why saying no collapses noisy timelines and amplifies the one that keeps calling. You'll understand why your random pauses have been upgrades, why the friendships reorganizing themselves are your field optimizing for signal to noise, why your boredom isn't failure but a buffer before the next timeline engages. You didn't stumble here. You were selected by the resonance you've been rehearsing in secret. Keep breathing. Let your shoulders drop. Feel the quiet weight in your chest. That weight is presence accumulating mass. In a moment, we'll name the cost of ignoring it, because when you don't engage this rise, drift returns, the window narrows, and the old timeline makes its final bid to reclaim you. That final bid from the old timeline doesn't arrive with thunder. It arrives as familiar comfort. A few days of, I'll get to it. A small return to scrolling, the tiny bargain to postpone breath and choose commentary over embodiment. The quantum field never punishes you, but it is exquisitely responsive. When you stop engaging the rise that's already happening, your signal loses phase lock, coherence leaks, the morphic field you've been tuning to releases its grip, and the world mirrors a version of you you no longer wish to be. Here is the quiet cost. You wake with a weight that isn't fatigue, it's unselected potential. Your attention stutters. Messages you meant to answer feel heavier than they should. Opportunities that were arriving on non-linear time begin to miss you by an hour, then a day, then a week. People who once met you in resonance start speaking to who you were last year. You explain yourself more. You apologize for taking up space. That isn't humility. It's evidence that the observer effect is running backward. Your observation reanimating a self you were already outgrowing. Identity erodes by repetition. Every time you choose analysis over breath, you teach your nervous system that safety lives in surveillance rather than presence. The cost is anxiety with no story. A background hum that steals clarity from decisions and color from simple moments. You will still function. You will still be praised. But the praise will be mispriced. You'll sense the discount baked into compliments that celebrate your reliability while ignoring your velocity. That discount becomes a contract. It writes itself into career choices, relationship roles, and the money you accept for work that asks more from your soul than it offers back. Missed windows are not punishments, they're orbital realities. In non-linear time, coherence opens like a tide, brief, precise, generous. When you meet it, the quantum shift feels almost effortless. When you ignore it, the next window still comes, but the interval stretches, and the energy required to re-enter phase increases. Think of two trains leaving the same station. At first, they run side by side. A small hesitation, and they part by inches. Keep hesitating, and those inches become miles you must sprint to cross. That sprint is the tax of missed anchoring. If you do not engage, you will start measuring too early to feel safe. Premature observation is the trap. You'll check for proof, collapse the wave, and conclude, it's not working, when in truth, the field was still softening around your new note. The emotion that follows is not simple disappointment. It's identity, confusion. You'll ask, who am I if not this, while standing inches from the threshold your body already crossed. That confusion invites the old entanglements back, roles you agreed to, dynamics you outgrew, conversations that spiral into correcting misunderstandings you no longer need to live in. Your body will tell the story first. Sleep gets shallow, breath sits higher in the chest. The jaw clenches at small requests. Food soothes more than it nourishes. You'll notice yourself anticipating backlash for good news, as if celebration owes debt. These are not random symptoms, they're coherence alarms. When you ignore them, the alarms get quieter, which seems like relief until you realize quiet has turned to numb. Numb is expensive. It costs creative risk, spontaneous yes, and the magnetism that drew the right people without effort. Numb trades serendipity for schedule, resonance for routine, and then asks you to be grateful for predictability you didn't actually choose. Relationships reorganize according to the frequency you inhabit. Refuse to anchor, and you'll keep serving as the regulator for someone else's unresolved timeline. You'll lower your wattage so the room stays comfortable. You'll call it compassion, but your system knows the bill. Scapegoat spikes, overgiving, the slow ache of being seen as useful instead of luminous. The field reflects contracts, and contracts either liberate or domesticate. If you do not engage, domestication wins. The cost is not drama, it's the disappearance of astonishment. There is also a financial cost that rarely announces itself directly. You will get exactly what matches your self-audience. If your own attention treats you as optional, so will the world. Projects stall, payments delay. An offer that should have felt like a timeline click arrives as, maybe next quarter. Meanwhile, the invitations that would have stretched you find another anchor. Morphic fields are efficient. They route coherence to the most available receiver. If you won't receive, someone else will, and you'll feel it as a hollow echo, the idea you carried showing up in another's hands. All of this is recoverable, but recovery demands more energy than continuing would have. The window you're in right now is narrow on purpose. Narrow focuses you. It removes dithering. It asks for a simple yes, not a complicated plan. Anchor the rise and the field multiplies it. Ignore it, and the field returns you to maintenance mode, where life still works. But the song you are starting to hear fades behind tasks that keep you respectable but unreborn. So breathe. Not because it's a technique to perform, but because breath is the instrument that reminds your system what note you intended. If you want the risk stated plainly, fail to engage, and you pay in delayed timelines, diluted identity, and a version of success that keeps you applauded and unlived. Engage, and the old timeline loses its final bid, and when it does, a hidden mechanism begins to reveal why your frequency rises even when you aren't watching, and how certainty in the body outruns certainty in the mind. Certainty in the body outruns certainty in the mind because selection happens before sight. The quantum field does not wait for your conscious verdict. It reads your coherence and routes reality accordingly. Before observation equals selection in the field. The observer effect is still true, but you've been taught to use it in the wrong sequence. When the mind stares first, it measures too soon and collapses possibilities into the nearest familiar form. When the body coheres first, it broadcasts a stable signature that the field treats as instruction, and observation simply confirms what embodiment already authored. Here's the hinge. Your nervous system carries an internal metronome breath cadence, heart rhythm, facial tone that either stutters with vigilance or relaxes into resonance. When your cadence stabilizes, the morphic field recognizes continuity. Continuity is how the field distinguishes wish from identity. Wish is intermittent amplitude. Identity is consistent frequency. The moment continuity persists longer than your doubt, the phase lock begins. Entanglement is not only between two particles across space, it's between you, now, and you, next across nonlinear time. When your system holds the note of you next long enough, a handshake completes in the field, and the timeline that fits you next becomes easier to enter than to resist. Mental certainty is a brilliant narrator. It can explain anything, including your delays. But embodied certainty is a quiet vector. It moves without convincing. You feel it as relief that carries direction, a softness that still chooses. In embodied certainty, the jaw unclenches before the argument is resolved. The shoulders descend before the email arrives. The breath deepens before the answer appears. That sequence is the signal. The field reads that ease as allocation instructions and begins to reorganize resources toward the future your body already trusts. You've experienced the early symptoms of pre-observational selection. The room brightens a shade for no reason. You forget to worry and only notice the absence of tension later. A message you were dreading writes itself in your head and lands clean when you send it. Strangers align to help without backstory. These are not coincidences. They are fringe effects of a timeline knitting itself around your new note. When you finally notice, you are observing the wake of a choice your body made, minutes, days, sometimes months earlier. The hidden mechanism is made of micro-rituals you keep underestimating. The way you exhale at the doorway changes the conversation waiting on the other side. The way your feet meet the ground in the morning changes what the day thinks you want. The way you pause after hearing your name changes whether the past or the future answers. These micro-acts stabilize coherence in the fascia, the breath, the electromagnetic field around your heart. The quantum field is exquisitely sensitive to stability. It is drawn to invariance. When your manner of being stops flickering, quantum selection accelerates. This is why trying hard often backfires. Trying hard introduces noise effort layered on effort until the signal distorts. The field can amplify a weak but consistent tone faster than it can amplify a loud, erratic one. Mental certainty is often loud. Embodied certainty is often steady. Steady wins because steady is legible to the field. Legibility is mercy. It shortens your path because reality doesn't have to guess who you're being today. Before observation equals selection also explains why feedback delays confuse you. You embody, nothing obvious happens, and the mind rushes in to measure, to check, to ask if it's working. In that impatient measurement, you collapse the wave prematurely and mislabel the silence as failure. But silence is gestation. In non-linear time, the signal leaves you, now, meets you, next, and returns as synchronicity. Some signals take the long way home because they're gathering architecture en route, allies, locations, language, thresholds. If you can resist the urge to overmeasure, the return arrives with fewer compromises. There's a second layer. The field doesn't only respond to what you hold, it responds to what you stop feeding. When you withdraw attention from the identity that required static, the static has nowhere to live. That vacuum is not emptiness, it's bandwidth returning. With bandwidth back, the system can afford nuance. Nuance lets you detect microphase shifts. The moment a conversation tilts, the instant a room says yes, the precise breath where the no you've been avoiding reveals itself. Precision prevents detours. It keeps you from accepting almost right timelines because you're afraid the right one won't cycle back. None of this requires perfection. It requires fidelity. Fidelity is your willingness to remain with the signal when the story hasn't caught up. It is keeping your nervous system on your side, choosing breath over biography, presence over performance. Fidelity is how the pre-observational selection holds long enough to densify into outcomes you can touch. Then observation does its rightful job. It witnesses, it names, it gives thanks, it directs attention to continue the loop. But the authorship has already happened. If you let this land, you'll stop arguing with the silence and start listening for the hum inside it. That hum is your next self calling from a timeline where you already anchored. You are not waiting to become that version. You are stabilizing access to it. When access holds, the world stops demanding proof and starts offering partnership. And I didn't believe any of this until life made me choose between my clever explanations and a single breath that changed everything, which is where my story begins and why it might save you a detour you don't need to take. You know that edge where effort becomes noise. I lived there. I measured early, argued with silence, and called it strategy. I stacked affirmations like shields and still woke with that heavy feeling of unselected potential. Then nonlinear time did what it does. It staged a doorway. It was late, a hallway washed in fluorescent hum, the kind of light that makes skin look tired. My phone was buzzing with messages I'd been avoiding, the jaw tight, the throat dry with coffee that had long gone bitter. I was about to step into a room where an answer would set a trajectory: money, collaborators, the next year of my work. The elevator had just sighed, closed behind me, shoes on tile, the faint scent of antiseptic and printer heat. I felt the old timeline making its bid. Measure now, prove now, push. And then it happened, small enough to miss, large enough to break a loop. I put my palm on the door, and instead of bracing, I let the breath fall. Not a technique, just an honest exhale. Shoulders dropped by a centimeter. The back of my tongue softened. The sternum warmed like someone turned on a light under the bone. In that second, the room I hadn't entered yet changed. I felt it as a pressure difference, as if the air on the other side got denser, friendlier. Time stretched thin, a translucent film I could see through. The morphic field met me first and matched the note. I didn't know to call it quantum selection then. I only knew the signal was cleaner when I stopped forcing. My attention widened, peripheral vision sharpened. The buzzing phone went still as if embarrassed. When I pushed the door, the handle moved without the usual click. The person I'd come to meet looked up and smiled like we'd already solved something. Words came out of my mouth that sounded like me but unarmored. We moved through the agenda in 20 minutes. The project turned from maybe to let's begin, with the one boundary I'd been afraid to assert accepted without negotiation. The body had authored before the mind observed, and observation simply confirmed the new contract. Immediate shifts rippled. On the way back, every crosswalk turned green in sync with my steps. A text from someone who had ghosted me months earlier arrived with a clean apology and a clear next offer. An invoice I'd resigned to chasing for weeks paid in full. The barista who never remembered my name said it perfectly, then slid an extra shot without comment. None of this felt like spectacle. It felt like a room quietly rearranging its furniture, because the guest it had been waiting for finally arrived. The night told a different story too. Sleep landed heavy and whole. I woke before the alarm with breath low in the belly, the jaw soft, the back of the heart warm. In that warmth, a sentence arrived fully formed, a line that had been hiding behind my cleverness. Legibility is mercy. It felt like the field speaking through me, reminding me that coherence is how reality reads you. I began to notice micro-rituals. I'd been rushing past the pause at thresholds, the weight distribution in my feet, the moment my name echoed in a room, and I either tightened or received. Each tiny choice was a vote in the morphic field, a way of telling the world which version of me to entangle with. Not everything turned easy overnight. Some relationships wobbled as my frequency stopped regulating their storm. A call led to a silence I'd been avoiding. An old role frayed at the edges, but even those frictions felt like alignment, not punishment. When one collaboration dissolved, two more appeared with better timing and less explanation. When I said no to an almost right invitation, a yes I couldn't have manufactured arrived through someone I hadn't met yet, carrying language I'd written in a notebook months before. Non-liner time was looping to deliver what my body had already selected. I started testing the doorway breath everywhere, before opening emails, at crosswalks, in the car outside a difficult conversation. The pattern held. When I embodied first, the observer effect became a seal, not a verdict. Meetings landed, boundaries held, money matched my self-audience. When I measured first, noise returned. Slight misunderstandings, delayed replies, a sense I was pushing a door that opens inward. The difference was not mystical fireworks. It was a measurable shift in coherence fascia slack, where it used to grip, heart rhythm smoothing, a hum in the skin that signaled, enough. You don't need my biography, you need the through line. You are standing in your own fluorescent hallway right now, even if it looks like a kitchen or a calendar invite or the edge of your bed. The threshold is not out there. It's in your interoception, the way the inside of you meets the next moment. I was exactly where you are until that one exhale taught my system the order of operations. Embody, then observe. After that, selection preceded sight, and the world became legible enough to partner with me. You don't need to earn this. You need to allow it, and you will, because your frequency is already rising. The next part will show you the mechanism you can reuse, how identity as frequency selects a timeline step by step, so you stop treating miracles as accidents and start treating them as outcomes of a stable note you can hold at will. You stop treating miracles as accidents the moment you sense the order of operations. Now, lean in. Identity radiates as frequency, and frequency performs quantum selection. Selection stabilizes into coherence, and coherence recruits matter and moments until the world admits what you've been being. That is the arc from invisible to inevitable, the way outcomes move from field to form without asking permission from your old narrative. Begin with the signal. You are a tuning fork in a room of countless notes. Strike the fork of who you are now becoming, and sympathetic resonance begins. Objects, invitations, and people that carry the same partials start to vibrate. Dissonant notes either retune to match or fall quiet around you. The field is not sentimental, it is precise. It listens for the note that repeats without flinching. That repetition is embodiment. When your breath, posture, and micro-choices keep sounding the same identity, the morphic field recognizes an invariant and routes probability toward it. Next is the handshake. Entanglement links you now with you next across non-linear time. Think of it like reaching through a thin membrane and touching the palm of the future that already recognizes you. When your system holds steady, the palms meet. That touch is phase lock. It's subtle, often arriving as relief that moves you forward. In that phase lock, the field stops shopping for alternatives and commits resources to a single trajectory. You feel fewer options, but more inevitability. You call it clarity. It is the field budgeting for your choice. Then comes stabilization. Coherence is not a mood, it's physics the body can learn. Breath becomes the metronome that keeps your signal clean. Gaze softens so the nervous system can widen without threat. Weight distributes through the feet, so the fascia stops rehearsing fight and can conduct charge without static. You are not performing calm. You are reducing noise so the field can read you. When the jaw slackens and the back of the heart warms, current flows in circuits that used to fritz under scrutiny. In that flow, you can hold the note longer and time behaves. Emails arrive when you're available to answer them. Doors open when your hand reaches them. Traffic aligns with your stride. These are surface echoes of stabilization, not the source. After stabilization, surfacing begins. Observation crystallizes what embodiment authored. This is where the observer effect belongs, not as a desperate scan for proof, but as a graceful seal. In surfacing, you speak as if the room already agrees, and the room does. You price your work at the number that fits your self-audience, and the client who was always yours appears. You draw a boundary, and the person who needed your old flexibility drifts without explosion. You wake, and the idea waiting in your chest finally gives you the words it wanted. Observation names what the field has already organized and tells attention where to continue feeding. You ask why this works when life often seems stubborn. Remember, dream, non-separation. In a dream, scenes obey the felt premise, not the spoken one. If you dream fear, the hallway lengthens, the door won't open, the phone dials wrong numbers. If you dream arrival, the hallway shortens, the door is ajar, The person answers on the first ring. Waking reality is a thicker dream with shared constraints, but the engine is similar. The field listens to the premise the body believes. When your somatic state declares, "I am who can carry this," the world stops testing and starts assisting. When your somatic state whispers, "Prove me," reality supplies exams. Protocols for coherence make this repeatable. You won't reduce them to superstition because they are measurable in your lived data. Notice the threshold rule. At literal doorways, exhale before entering so your system leads the room instead of bracing against it. Notice the name rule. When you hear your name, let breath drop and receive it, training your field to accept recognition without shrinking. Notice the timing rule. Pause half a breath after an impulse to speak, allowing the future version of you to finish the sentence before the past version performs. These are not theatrics, they are ways to keep the tuning fork pure, so selection doesn't wobble. There is also the attention economy. Where you invest micro-attention, the field invests macro resources. If you split attention to track threat after you have already chosen, you invite the old timeline to submit a counteroffer. It will sound reasonable. It will ask for just a little compromise. Compromise is not the enemy, incoherence is. When a small no protects the frequency, it's not rigidity, it's fidelity. Fidelity keeps the handshake intact while form catches up. You worry about mistakes, the field is forgiving. It recalculates constantly like navigation. If you exit too early by measuring, you re-enter by embodying. If you people please and blur your signal, you sharpen it by feeling your feet until weight returns to the back half of the soul and your chest remembers forward is safe. If you defer, you repair by one clean boundary spoken calmly. Each repair is a broadcast that says, the note remains. Consistency over intensity is how the system trusts you again. Remember that not separate dream. It cuts both ways. Nightmares dissolve when you change the premise mid-scene. Waking detours dissolve when you change the premise mid-day. You don't need a ritual chamber for this. You need a reliable body. That reliability is your altar. The field is always listening for a note it can fund. Play it the same way long enough, and rooms rearrange, calendars reflow, money reassigns, and relationships either deepen into truth or drift into gratitude at a distance. None of that is punishment or reward. It is physics reading fidelity. So here is the mechanism, plain and kind. Sound the note, hold the note, let the world tune to it. When temptation to check creeps in, breathe like the answer is already walking down the hall. It is. That's why your frequency rises, even when you don't notice, because the part of you doing the choosing doesn't need your surveillance to stay true. From here, you'll want signs you can trust, not as tests, but as mirrors. They're already arriving, and you'll recognize them by the way your body tells you first. You asked for mirrors, not tests. Start with the body, because it keeps score in real time. Sleep changes first. You fall under faster, as if gravity increased by a gentle percentage, or you wake before alarms with a calm insistence to move. Dreams grow organized, not louder, with scenes that complete instead of fragment. Breath drops into the lower ribs without you forcing it. The jaw unhooks mid-sentence. Heat pools behind the sternum and low in the belly, like a pilot light that refuses to go out. This is coherence announcing itself. Fascia unwinding, heart rhythm smoothing, charge moving without static. Your posture edits itself, less forward chasing, more vertical allowing, because embodiment has begun to anchor the selection your mind would only later notice. Energy reallocates in patterns you can measure. Stimuli you tolerated now feel like sand in the gears. Loud rooms tire you faster, not because you're weaker, but because the signal you carry has become precise and expensive. Food choices simplify toward what keeps your note steady. Sugar stops bribing your nervous system. Caffeine becomes punctuation, not a lifeline. You stop reaching for commentary when silence would do. These are micro-optimizations from the field. The morphic intelligence around you favors stability when a new timeline is knitting itself. Relationships reorganize next. The people who expected you to regulate their storm feel heavier to lift. You answer slower, not as punishment, but as fidelity to the signal. Some connections pause without drama, opening space you didn't know you were renting out. Others intensify with clean ease. Conversations skip small talk and land where they were always going. Invitations arrive from those already entangled with your next frequency colleagues who mirror your boundaries instead of testing them. Friends who celebrate without inserting a quiet debt. You'll see new constellations form around you. The room reshuffles so the anchors can see each other. That isn't clique formation, it's resonance mapping. The field prefers networked coherence. Money responds in subtler ways than numbers alone. Amounts may rise, but the real indicator is pacing. Payments arrive on time, then early, with fewer reminders. Clients stop asking for discounts because your pricing reads as policy, not performance. Windfalls feel less like luck and more like delayed alignment. Expenses that used to recur evaporate as the old timeline's maintenance fees lapse. You feel unembarrassed about receiving. That lack of friction is not greed. It's the observer effect, serving its proper place, confirming what embodiment already commissioned. Direct downloads become frequent and embarrassingly practical. Sentences arrive with the right verbs. You know who to contact before you think of why. Solutions show up as body impulses, a nudge to stand, a pull to the window followed by the email you were waiting for. You stop auditioning for your own ideas. The signal-to-noise ratio improves so much that you trust a two-word instruction. Send it, call now, wait. These micro-commands are the field speaking in a language your nervous system learned once it's stabilized. Doubt still visits, but its half-life shortens. The impulse outlives indecision. Non-liner time starts showing its seams. Delays stop feeling like losses and reveal themselves as precise edits. A meeting moves and lands on the day your words are clean. Traffic reroutes and places you beside the person you needed to meet. You reject an almost right offer, and the real one appears within a cycle, carrying details you wrote months ago. Hours dilate during work you feared would drain you. You look up and it's done, with no aftercost. Days contract around obligations that no longer match. Cancellations feel like mercy. You notice that late keeps resulting in perfect timing, because the timeline you're anchoring is optimizing connection, not clock. Your environment joins the conversation. Objects break or disappear when they belong to the old identity. You stop replacing them without knowing why. Clothes that once felt like armor hang awkwardly on your new posture. You seek different light, warmer in the morning, darker at night, because your circadian rhythm is syncing with a pace that believes it will be supported. You tidy without making a plan. You throw away cleanly. These are not aesthetic choices. They're phase adjustments. Communication changes. You speak slower and land stronger. You say no with less heat and more finality. You ask for what you want once. You stop rehearsing in your head before difficult conversations because the entanglement with you next has given your voice a weight that carries even when you're quiet. People listen differently. Interruptions drop. Meetings end earlier. The field is conserving energy on your behalf. Not all signs are comfortable. Old patterns may flare as they exit. Headaches visit the temples where you used to clench. A day of inexplicable fatigue clears after one honest cry. An argument surfaces a sentence you were afraid to say and ends something that was costing you signal. You call this turbulence, but watch what follows. Clarity with no hangover, relief with direction. Discomfort without chaos is the body healing while the timeline locks. There are also signatures of precise luck. You think of a book and it appears on a friend's table. You need a number and glance at a receipt with the exact sequence. You wonder about a move and a video tours a neighborhood you hadn't considered. These are not the universe flirting. They're the morphic field forwarding mail between entangled versions of you. The more you notice without gripping, the more frequent they become, not as trophies but as guidance. Finally, you stop bargaining with your boundaries. You do less to prove and more to express. You take up the space the new frequency requires, and the room expands. The cost of ignoring yourself becomes obvious in the body within minutes, not months. You recover faster from deviations because fidelity returns as soon as you breathe. This is the clearest sign. Your system corrects without panic. Correction is not moral, it's musical. You're learning to stay in tune. None of these indicators demand worship. They ask for acknowledgement and continued embodiment. If you treat them as proof, you'll measure too early and wobble the note. If you treat them as mirrors, you'll trust the rise and keep selecting the timeline that keeps selecting you. From here, the next move is simple and ceremonial. Choose on purpose, in your body, so the field can fund you. I'll show you exactly how to do that. You don't need another theory. You need a signal the field can't mistake. Start by meeting your next moment the way you've already started meeting sleep, with dignity in the body. Let the last sentence's certainty become your first instruction. Stand where you are and allow gravity to make you honest. Heels receive a little more weight, knees unfreeze, pelvis tips until the lower belly can move. You are informing the morphic field that vigilance is over and coherence is in command. The observer effect belongs to what happens after this, but right now you are authoring the premise. Breathe as if you've already arrived. Through the nose, glide in until the side ribs widen, then hover just long enough to feel the edges soften, then pour the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. Don't perform calm. Let the jaw slacken where it wants. Tongue heavy, back of the throat warm, gaze unhurried. The microsomatic cue that locks this in is simple. Let the back of your heart grow 3 degrees warmer than your chest. Imagine the warmth as a small lamp behind the sternum, steady and low. When that warmth is present, coherence has a place to land. The quantum field reads warmth before words. Now make a quiet declaration that fits in one breath so it can ride the exhale like a signature. I am the resonance that selects this timeline. Say it once, not to the room, but to the you next, reaching back through non-linear time. Entanglement needs clarity, not volume. If a different sentence arrives shorter, truer, use it. You'll know it's right because your shoulders drop a millimeter and the skin along your forearms hums. That hum is selection beginning. Invite a doorway, literal or imagined, because thresholds teach the body the order of operations. Place a palm on the frame, table edge, or your own ribs, and let the exhale fall through your feet. The anchor is contact, the cue that says, this body is in the loop. With your palm there, name the room you are about to enter and the version of you who belongs in it. Name it softly, the room where my work is valued, the call where boundaries hold, the morning where my voice weighs more than my doubt. Naming is not spellcraft, it is attention agreeing to a coordinate. Attention is the currency the field spends. Walk through. Let the first 3 steps be slower, knees still loose, jaw soft, eyes receiving the light rather than grabbing for details. In those steps, you are performing quantum selection. Identity is a tuning fork. The fork needs a clean strike. If you feel the urge to measure, breathe before you look. If you feel the urge to justify, feel your heels before you speak. The body is not decoration. It is the instrument that keeps the note pure while the world retunes around you. Your micro-ritual becomes reliable when you add an anchoring step you can repeat anywhere. Choose one gesture that means seal. 2 fingers to the sternum for a heartbeat, thumb and forefinger together, just enough to feel the whirl of skin. A light press of tongue to palate for 3 heartbeats. Pair the gesture with the same lengthened exhale. Every repetition writes to the morphic field, this is the invariant. Invariants are how the quantum field distinguishes a wish from an identity. You are telling reality, fondness aside, this is who I am now. You will be tempted to confirm too soon. Resist early measurement like you'd resist waking a sleeping child. Let the field do its silent work. If you need a check-in, use sensation rather than outcome. Warmth behind the heart, present or absent, jaw easy or armored, breath down or high. Sensation tells you whether coherence holds. Outcomes arrive as their echo. As the day moves, speak one clean sentence in every room that aligns the timeline without argument. It might be a boundary, a price, a request, a no. Delivery matters less than the state from which you deliver. If your sentence emerges from the warm lamp of your back heart, the room will recognize it as policy. If it emerges from a braced jaw, the room will hear it as performance and test it. Your declaration is a contract, your state is the ink. When turbulence appears, as it sometimes must, to clear old entanglements, treat it as weather, not verdict. Return to the heel weight cue, the jaw softening, the longer exhale. Whisper your one-breath declaration again, not to fight the storm, but to remind the field which ship you sail. The quantum shift is not accomplished by force. It is stabilized by fidelity. Fidelity is choosing the same note when noise offers you a cheaper one. At night, close the loop so non-linear time can amortize your effort. Sit at the edge of the bed, let the lamp behind the heart glow, and review the day for one moment when you held the note and one where you wobbled. Thank the first. Rerun the second in your body with the corrected breath, as if you were dubbing a new track over the scene. The field accepts edits. When you sleep, entanglement does maintenance. You'll feel it as dreams that complete and mornings that start in motion. You do not have to be perfect to be legible. You have to be consistent enough that the morphic field can invest in you. This is the activation. Breath that lengthens, a micro-cue that warms, a doorway touch, a one-breath declaration, a gesture that seals, a nightly edit that returns you to resonance. Do it now, where you are. Let the next room meet the version of you you've already selected. And as that room rearranges around your coherence, let the vision of who you're becoming step forward so clearly that you can taste the ease of living as them, because that vision is already reaching back with instructions. Imagine waking into a body that already voted for you overnight. The lamp behind your heart is warm before your eyes open. Breath descends on its own, and the first thought isn't a sentence, it's a steadiness. You sit up and the floor greets your heels with that familiar yes. There is no pep talk, no scramble for proof. The quantum field has learned your signature. The morphic field routes the morning accordingly. Coffee or tea becomes a conversation with timing. Windows brighten at the moment you stand. You feel the day as a room that's already been set to your note. In this life, the observer effect is a seal, not a searchlight. You check less because your body's coherence is doing the heavy lifting. Emails arrive in batches that match your attention cycles. A message you feared months ago now reads like an invitation from a version of you who no longer negotiates their worth. Your calendar has negative space between anchors, one deep project, one meaningful conversation, one threshold where you pause and breathe as ceremony. Non-linear time cooperates. When a meeting moves, the open hour becomes the precise span your best idea needed to land. Imagine walking into rooms that tune to you. Your posture carries a promise the world recognizes. You say fewer words and land more outcomes. The pitch that used to take 20 slides resolves in 7 sentences. A client says, that number works, because your price held the resonance of policy. Money enters as rhythm instead of spikes, steady inflows, clean invoices, fewer leaky yeses. Windfalls arrive without adrenaline because magnetism is now mechanical, a byproduct of fidelity. You feel generosity return as infrastructure, an extra week added to a deadline before you ask, a travel upgrade that saves your body's signal, a referral that fits like it was pre-warmed. Relationships reflect the upgrade without theater. The friend who once needed your weather reports now brings their own umbrella. Conversations begin where they used to end. You don't fix, you witness. You don't vanish, you anchor. Entanglement simplifies. The people who match your note don't ask you to dim. The ones who don't match drift to the distance of gratitude. You stop confusing regulation with love. Boundaries read as care because they are. Invitations arrive from coherent rooms that want what you actually carry, not the version they hoped you'd perform. Work feels like an instrument in tune. You enter a session, and time dilates 2 hours function like 6, but your nervous system lands softer than before you started. Creative decisions click without post-mortem. The right verb finds you mid-sentence. You forget to postpone the bold move, and it's already done. When friction appears, it appears early and honestly, a clear no that keeps you from paying later. Your appetite for almost right fades. You can feel when a timeline is 1 hertz off, and you smile as you release it. That smile is the quantum selection, declining noise without resentment. The body remains your compass. It signals yes as heat that spreads outward from the sternum, no as a coolness that gathers at the throat. Food becomes partnership, not consolation. Sleep lands like a velvet weight. You exit dreams with completed arcs and next steps you didn't have to argue into existence. Exercise feels less like penance and more like conductivity. You move charge through fascia so the field can read you clearly. Skin hums after a clean decision. Eyes soften after a right refusal. The jaw stays easy through success because you are no longer bracing for backlash from a world that used to test you. You develop a fondness for thresholds. Doorways are small temples. You pause with palm to frame and let the exhale carry your quiet declaration. I am the resonance that selects this timeline. The room meets you on those terms. Negotiations conclude faster. Collaboration briefings end with fewer bullets and more trust. You no longer over-explain what your presence already communicates. When someone misunderstands, you don't chase their perception down the hall. The field handles it or routes you elsewhere. Your job is fidelity. The field's job is logistics. Synchronicity stops being spectacle and becomes logistics too. A flight you thought you needed cancels, and a virtual room opens that yields greater reach. You consider a move, and 3 addresses appear with neighbors already entangled with your work. A sentence on a stranger's tote bag completes a problem you left on your desk. Chance keeps acting like choreography because your coherence keeps signaling the choreographer. Imagine ease without laziness, softness without retreat. The power you used to spend defending your value now funds precision. You don't hurry. You catch the exact moment a yes turns into a no, and you honor it. You lead rooms by calming your own system first, and people follow because they can feel the math. Less noise, more signal. You are generous where it multiplies, not where it leaks. Gratitude moves from performance to physics. You feel the field respond when you thank it, not out of superstition, but because acknowledgement is attention, and attention is how you keep the loop clean. This identity does not abolish challenge. It changes your cost structure. When turbulence hits, you recognize old entanglements releasing. You don't interpret every stumble as a verdict. You breathe, re-anchor, and watch non-linear time stitch the edit. Recovery takes hours instead of weeks. Apologies are simple and early. Repairs hold. You remain legible to the field through it all. And the texture of ordinary moments turns exquisite. A walk to the corner store becomes a corridor of timely nods. The cashier pronounces your name, and it lands in your chest like a bell. You cook while the sky goes gold, and you feel the day close its loop. With that subtle click, your system now recognizes the observer effect, sealing a promise embodied at dawn. Hold this vision not as fantasy, but as muscle memory from the near side of your next timeline. You are already practicing its pieces. The coherence you cultivate is personal, yes, but it isn't private. Every time you maintain the note, the morphic field updates its map. Others find the path by resonance, not instruction. That's how this life scales, one anchored body at a time, teaching the room to breathe. From here, it becomes obvious that your rise is permission for the collective to organize differently, and the ripples of your fidelity travel farther than you'll ever watch. Your rise is not a private miracle. Coherence is communicable. When you hold the note, the room learns it, and the room is not just furniture and air. It is people, patterns, streets, feeds, and schedules, an ecosystem of attention that takes its cues from whichever signal repeats without flinching. The planetary morphic field is listening, not as a judge, but as an amplifier. It routes resources toward the frequencies that stabilize, because stability lets more beings anchor without burning out. Every time you embody first and observe second, you model the order of operations in a way language alone cannot reach. Think of yourself as a quiet node in a vast network. You are not above anyone, not elected, not ordained. You are entangled. That entanglement means your coherence offers others a path of least resistance toward their own. When you breathe at a threshold, the person across from you often softens by a millimeter without knowing why. When you price from self-audience rather than fear, someone watching remembers a number they were afraid to say. When you say no without heat, a friend halfway across the city finds the courage to exit a contract that was draining their field. Non-linear time threads these echoes. Your choice here ripples there, not as mystic theater, but as resonance seeking more of itself. This is how a quantum shift scales in a species. We copy states faster than we copy strategies. Strategies are local, states are broadcast. The observer effect at the collective level is attention deciding which reality to feed. Panic feeds velocity without destination. Presence feeds direction without panic. When your body votes for presence under pressure, you subtract noise from the shared field. That subtraction is generous. It returns bandwidth to the commons. In meetings, families, streets, and timelines, fewer people have to push against static when even one person stops generating it. Mission without grandiosity looks like this. You become an anchor. Anchoring is not an identity, it's a service. An anchor holds a note long enough for others to hear their own. You do it in a checkout line when you refuse to pass along someone else's urgency. You do it in a comment thread when you add clarity instead of heat. You do it in team decisions when you ask the question that makes the room breathe. You do it on a train when you notice your jaw and soften it, letting strangers nearby unconsciously mirror the release. None of these moments make headlines, they make neighborhoods. At scale, coherent anchors change what the field can fund. The morphic map updates, and probability redistributes. Projects that serve many begin to feel inevitable. Exploitative offers lose their gravitational pull because fewer bodies are available to hold them up. Money starts flowing along channels where shame isn't the gatekeeper. Art that dignifies nervous systems travels farther. Schools that treat breath as foundational literacy become normal. You do not accomplish this alone. You do your centimeter, and that centimeter is not small, it's exact. There will be days when your note wobbles, and you'll wonder whether you still deserve to be an anchor. The answer is built into the physics. Fidelity isn't perfection, it's returning. The field does not need flawless beings, it needs reliable ones. Reliability looks like honest repair, early apology, and quick re-anchoring. When you model repair, you teach a culture how to keep moving without exiling itself for being human. That lesson is medicine across families, teams, and movements. The collective learns to correct without hysteria, to upgrade without humiliation. This also clarifies influence. Charisma can gather attention, coherence can redistribute it wisely. Your task is not to become louder, it's to become legible. Legibility at scale is mercy. It lets the field recognize you quickly and route the right work to your hands. It prevents the waste of miscast roles and mispriced effort. It keeps leaders from being worshipped and followers from being erased because everyone can see which note they actually hold. In that clarity, hierarchy softens into choreography. As anchors proliferate, non-linear time feels more humane. Windows stop opening only for the lucky and begin opening for the ready. Serendipity stops rewarding chaos and starts rewarding care. Cities feel different at the level of sidewalks. Fewer collisions of haste, more glances that land like consent to coexist. Supply chains strengthen where relationships are coherent. Crisis response speeds up where anchors already know each other by resonance, not by resume. This is not utopia. It is physics, given room to express itself through bodies committed to being useful. You will be tempted to dramatize your role or minimize it. Both are forms of self-absorption. The middle way is stewardship. Steward your signal. Keep the lamp behind the heart warm. Keep the jaw unarmored. Keep the heel weight honest. Protect your bandwidth so you can lend it. Celebrate others when you feel the field. Click around their yes. Decline thrones and join circles. Choose work that returns you to embodiment rather than work that requires you to perform embodiment. The quantum field does not negotiate with fantasies. It collaborates with reality as it is, and reality, when met cleanly, is generous. Remember this too. Every anchored choice gives someone else proof that their unseen work counts. You will never witness most of these ripples. That's right and fair. Anonymous influence is stable because it isn't hunting for applause, and what doesn't hunt for applause doesn't distort its note to get fed. Your reward is simpler and heavier. You get to live inside the resonance you keep gifting. So let the mission be small and daily. Let it be the refusal to spread static, the willingness to price truthfully, the bravery to rest when rest would protect the signal, the humility to continue when attention moves on. If enough of us do that, the morphic field will behave like a well-tuned instrument in our hands, and the timelines that honor life will become simpler to select than to resist. From here, all that remains is to close this loop in your body and choose your role out loud, not with spectacle, but with one word that tells the field you're ready to be counted. In the final part, we'll seal it, anchor your next step, and invite you into the corridor where the next breadcrumb is already waiting. Step into that corridor now. Keep the lamp warm behind your heart. Let heel weight settle until the floor answers. This is where mission becomes maintenance, where the morphic field updates because you made yourself legible. You don't need a ceremony bigger than breath. You need coherence that the quantum field can read at a glance. Here is your close. On your next exhale, choose in your body, then let language seal it. This is not performance. It is quantum selection expressed as sound. Whisper the sentence that has accompanied you here. Short, clean, undeniable. Feel the observer effect arriving after, like a seal on soft wax. This is how timelines lock. Embodiment, then observation. Then the world reassigns its furniture to fit you. Non-linear time will meet you quickly after this. Watch for it without hunting. A message will arrive early. A door will open smoother than physics suggests. A person will mirror your boundary as if they practiced in a dream. That's entanglement behaving as promised. When it does, acknowledge it out loud. Gratitude is not superstition. It's resonance management. Attention is currency. Spend it where the signal multiplies. Now, a quiet request, given in the same order. If this transmission steadied your breath or clarified your next note, tell the field by naming it where we can hear you. In the comments, type the one-word activation code, embodied, not as hype, as anchoring. Public declarations reduce wobble. They let the network feel your yes and lean with you. Then subscribe not as habit, as intention. So this corridor stays visible each time your frequency rises and asks for the next calibration. The quantum shift is iterative. I'll keep building rooms that help you hold the note. And when you're ready to extend this into action today, follow the breadcrumb placed for this exact phase. The next video is a live threshold, a guided doorway sequence that deepens coherence, trains the jaw to stay unarmored while you speak price and boundary, and times your exhale to the moment rooms decide. It will give you the microsomatic anchors that make selection obvious even under pressure. Watch it, not to collect ideas, but to practice until your body carries the policy your mind used to negotiate. Before you go, close this loop with one final check. Is the back of your heart 3 degrees warmer than your chest? Is the jaw unhooked, breath low, gaze receiving? If yes, your system is readable. If no, linger, one more breath. The world will wait the extra second it takes you to become yourself. You were chosen by the signal you've been rehearsing in secret. You are not behind, you are on time. The field has been routing toward you in quiet ways while you learned the sequence. Keep it simple. Anchor the note. Let measurement arrive as a kindness after the form is alive. Comment embodied to be counted. Subscribe with intention so we continue this calibration at the exact moment you need it. Then step through to the next breadcrumb and let the room tune to you. The timeline you selected is already leaning in. Your coherence is the invitation.